For 8 years, every Sunday morning, my wife Emily drove to a quiet cemetery on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. She always said she needed a little time alone, and I never questioned it. Marriage teaches you to respect the spaces people carve out for themselves. But lately, something about her distant eyes and late-night tears gnawed at me. Curiosity turned into worry, and worry into something darker. Last Sunday, I finally followed her. I expected grief, nostalgia, something I could explain. But when she knelt at a grave I'd never heard of, a grave bearing a name that shook me to my core, I realized my marriage was built on a story I didn't know. And the truth, it changed everything. Before we go on, feel free to like the video and subscribe. Your support really helps the channel grow. I've always believed that real marriage, isn't built on grand gestures or perfect communication, or even the kind of passionate drama movies like to sell you. No, marriage is built on routines. Quiet, ordinary, unremarkable routines. Those were the things that stitched my life with Emily together for nearly a decade. Most mornings in our little house on the east side of the Columbus looked the same. I'd be up at 5:30, slipping out of bed so the old frame wouldn't creak and wake her. I'd set the coffee to brew, lace my boots, and head out into whatever weather Ohio decided to throw at me. Freezing wind, spring storms, or those humid summer mornings where the air felt like a warm sponge. I worked as an electrician and Emily as a school receptionist. We weren't rich, not by a long shot, but we weren't drowning either. Middle class, stable, always budgeting, always saving for the next minor emergency life liked to lob at us. Our evenings were simple. Dinner together around 6, half watching the local news, taking out the trash, folding laundry, and talking about whatever small things happened during our day. Nothing extraordinary, nothing dramatic, and honestly, I never wanted anything else. I liked our life. But there was one thing, just one, that never quite fit into our otherwise predictable rhythm. Every Sunday morning, without fail, Emily left the house at exactly 8:45 a.m. She'd kiss me lightly on the cheek, grab her keys, slip into her old silver sedan, and tell me the same thing every time. I just need a little time alone. And that was it. No explanation, no variation, no deeper discussion. For 8 years, I didn't question it. Maybe because she wasn't a secretive person by nature. Maybe because she always came home calmer, steadier, like whatever happened during that hour helped her reset for the week. Or maybe because, in a marriage, you learn there are rooms in each other's hearts you simply don't enter unless you're invited. But a few months ago, something changed. It started small, so small I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Emily began spacing out at odd moments, staring at the wall, like she was trying to remember something that kept slipping away. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Her job had been chaotic lately. New staff, new systems, kids acting out because winter break was approaching. But then I noticed she'd go quiet at dinner, fork hovering in midair, eyes unfocused. One night in particular stuck with me. It was late, maybe past midnight, when I woke up and realized the bed beside me was empty. I found her sitting on the couch, lights off, television glowing faintly. She was wiping her cheeks, quick, like she didn't want to be caught. I asked her gently, "Em, you okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just long day." But her voice sounded thin, stretched tight, like she'd been crying for a long time and didn't want me to hear the cracks. Over the next few weeks, the signs kept stacking up, quiet but terrifyingly consistent. She'd forget the grocery list she always made. She'd leave the laundry half-folded and walk away like she lost her train of thought. She'd bite her nails, a habit she'd kicked years ago. Some nights she curled into me like she wanted to disappear. Others, she lay stiff and distant, eyes open long after she thought I'd fallen asleep. What scared me most wasn't that something was wrong. It was that she wasn't letting me in. Her Sunday trips grew longer too. She started leaving at 8:20, then 8:10, then sometimes even before I woke. She'd return with red eyes, shaky hands, a smile that wasn't a smile at all. Every part of her body language screamed that she was carrying something heavy, something I couldn't see. I didn't think cheating. I didn't think betrayal. Honestly, the thought never crossed my mind. What I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt, it was grief. Grief so deep she didn't know where to put it. But I didn't know why, and that was the part that began to eat me alive. There are questions you avoid because you fear the answer will break the world you know. There are others you avoid because you fear the answer will break the person you love. For me, this was both. One night, as she climbed into bed with her face streaked from silent tears, I asked her softly, "Em, do you want to talk about whatever's hurting you?" She froze. Her whole body went still like a deer caught in headlights. Then she forced another smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, really." But she wasn't fine. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt completely shut out. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathing, shallow, uneven, wondering how someone could be lying right next to me yet feel so far away. I stared at the ceiling, counting seconds, counting memories, counting ways I might be losing her without even knowing why. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I needed to understand. I needed to help her. I needed to know what was pulling her apart. And the only way to start was to find out where she went on Sundays. I wish I could say things got better after that night, after I finally acknowledged to myself that something was wrong. But they didn't. If anything, the space between us became wider, filled with questions neither of us knew how to ask. Emily tried to keep up the appearance of normalcy. She still woke early, still packed my lunch before work, still asked about my day when I came home. But it all felt rehearsed, like she was performing the role of wife rather than living it. And I couldn't ignore the way her hands sometimes trembled when she reached for a cup, or how she'd drift off mid-sentence and blink as if she'd momentarily forgotten where she was. I kept telling myself it was stress, or maybe seasonal depression. Ohio winters had a way of grinding people down, but none of those explanations fit the way she'd clutch her phone when it buzzed, or how she flinched when I walked into a room unexpectedly. It wasn't fear of me. It was fear of whatever lived in her own thoughts. One Thursday evening, I came home early from work. My job site had shut down for the day due to a power issue, and I figured I'd surprise her with Chinese takeout from her favorite spot on Livingston Avenue. When I walked through the door, the house was mostly dark. The faint glow from the dining room told me she was home. I found her sitting at the table, elbows propped, face buried in her hands. She didn't hear me, and I didn't say anything, not immediately. Something told me that if she knew I was watching, she'd pull herself together and hide whatever she was feeling. Her shoulders shook. Her breathing was uneven. She looked like someone trying to hold herself together with fraying thread. "Em?" I said softly. She jerked upright, wiping her cheeks with the back of her sleeve. "Hey, didn't hear you come in?" Her voice was raw, stretched thin, the exact opposite of fine. I set the takeout on the table. "I got dinner. Thought it'd be a nice surprise." She nodded, forcing a smile. "Thank you. Long day." I knew better than to push in that moment. She wasn't ready, and I didn't want to corner her, so we ate quietly, pretending not to hear the tremor in her breaths or notice the redness around her eyes. The silence between us that night didn't feel peaceful or comfortable. It felt like something growing roots. By Saturday, I was desperate for something, anything that would help. I suggested we go for a walk through Schiller Park, maybe grab hot chocolate afterward, something simple, something grounding, something normal. She agreed, but the whole time she held my hand loosely, like she was afraid her touch might break me, or break her. We passed families with kids, couples walking dogs, college students taking pictures near the fountain. Emily's smile flickered on and off, unable to stay long enough to warm her face. At one point, I said gently, I feel like you've been somewhere else lately." She stopped walking. Her grip on my hand tightened for a moment, then fell away. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I really am." "Trying for what?" I asked. She looked down at the ground. "To be okay." There were 1,000 things I wanted to say, questions I wanted to ask, but the way her eyes glistened told me she wasn't ready, and I wasn't going to push her into explaining something she didn't have words for yet. That night, she went to bed early. That night, I didn't follow. I stayed downstairs replaying the day in my mind, trying to stitch together the pieces, the tears, the distance, the trembling hands, the Sunday rituals. But no matter how hard I tried, nothing formed a complete picture. I wasn't angry, I wasn't jealous, I wasn't suspicious. I was scared, terrified that whatever she was carrying was slowly drowning her. And maybe I was terrified she didn't trust me enough to let me help. Sunday morning came too quickly. Usually, I barely noticed the sound of her keys jingling, the door closing quietly behind her. But now, every sound felt loud, too loud. The lock clicking, her footsteps descending the porch stairs, the engine starting. I watched her from the living room window, heart pounding with worry. She backed out of the driveway, her face pale, eyes fixed ahead like she was bracing for a storm. She left earlier than usual. 8:00 a.m. No explanation, no goodbye kiss, just gone. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in certainty. If I didn't learn what she was dealing with, I was going to lose her entirely. Not to another man, not to drugs or secrets, but to something internal, emotional, heavy, something she didn't know how to face alone. When she drove off, I sat there for a few moments, gripping the edge of the couch, feeling the weight of the decision forming inside me. Follow her. Not to accuse, not to confront, but to understand. To understand the pain she had carried for 8 years without ever letting me see it. I hadn't taken this step before because I respected her privacy, because I wanted to believe she'd come to me when she was ready, because trust meant letting her have her moments of silence. But trust didn't mean letting the woman you love suffer alone. And today, for the first time, I felt like that silent suffering was tearing her apart. So I grabbed my jacket, slipped my keys into my pocket, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The sun was barely rising. The neighborhood was still quiet. A thin layer of frost coated the grass, glistening like a frozen field of tiny diamonds. I got into my truck, heart pounding hard enough to shake my ribs. My hands trembled against the steering wheel. Because I wasn't just following her, I was crossing a line we had drawn together years ago. A line of trust, a line of privacy, a line of unspoken understanding. But sometimes love means breaking a promise, when keeping it would destroy the person you made it to. I took a deep breath, started the engine, and pulled out slowly, keeping enough distance so she wouldn't see me. Whatever waited at the end of that drive, whatever truth she'd been carrying for 8 long years, I was finally about to face it. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. I kept far enough behind her that she wouldn't notice my truck in the rearview mirror. She drove slow, too slow for a quiet Sunday morning, as if her mind was somewhere else entirely. The kind of slow that makes you wonder if the person behind the wheel is having second thoughts about where they're going, or about going at all. My heart pounded the entire time, not out of suspicion, but out of fear. I didn't know what I was going to find. I only knew that whatever had been eating away at her for months, maybe for years, it was waiting at the end of this drive. She headed north toward the outskirts of Columbus, where the houses thinned out and the land opened into long stretches of flat winter fields. The sky was a dull gray blanket, the kind that pressed down low and made everything feel heavy. Every few minutes her brake lights flickered as she slowed down, then sped up again. It was like she was fighting herself internally, part of her wanting to turn back, the other part forcing herself forward. My chest tightened watching that. She wasn't running to something. She was running from something. And whatever waited ahead was the thing she couldn't escape. I followed her past a quiet row of abandoned storefronts, a gas station with only one working pump, and a line of bare oak trees swaying like they carried secrets in their branches. The roads were nearly empty. The world felt paused, as if holding its breath with me. After about 20 minutes, she turned off the main road and onto a narrow, winding lane lined with old stone walls. I knew instantly where she was going. Anyone who's lived in Columbus long enough knows that road. It led to Hillside Memorial Cemetery. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. A cemetery. For 8 years, she had been coming here. For 8 years, I never asked why. And suddenly, that felt like the biggest mistake of my life. I parked a little ways back behind a row of tall evergreens, far enough that she wouldn't see me, but close enough that I could follow on foot. When I got out of the truck, the cold hit me like a wall. My breath puffed white in the air as I moved slowly between the trees, keeping my distance, my body buzzing with nerves. She walked up the narrow stone path with her head slightly bowed, holding a small bouquet of winter flowers. I recognized the way she held them. Gently, carefully, almost protectively. Not like someone delivering flowers out of obligation, but like someone bringing something meaningful, something personal. There were no other visitors around, just her, just the sound of her footsteps on the frozen grass, just the quiet rustle of wind weaving through the headstones. From behind a cluster of leafless bushes, I watched her slow to a stop. She didn't wander. She didn't search. She walked straight to a single grave, like muscle memory, like routine, like a path she had walked 100 times before. My heartbeat roared in my ears. She kneeled, her shoulders curled inward, her head lowered. Her hands shook as she placed the flowers down. Even from a distance, I could see she was crying. Not soft crying, not silent crying. It was the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, somewhere wounded, somewhere old. That was the moment I realized. Whatever lived beneath the surface of my wife's heart was much larger than anything I'd imagined. I moved closer, not out of anger, but out of an overwhelming need to understand what I'd been blind to for 8 years. The closer I got, the colder the air seemed to grow. It wasn't the weather. It was something else, something heavy pressing against my chest. I stepped slowly, my boots crunching lightly in the frost. Emily didn't hear me at first. She was lost in whatever memory or emotion had brought her here, lost enough that the world around her faded into the background. When I finally got close enough to read the grave marker, my entire body went rigid. The name carved into the stone. I knew it instantly. It hit me so hard it felt like the ground shifted under my feet. I felt my breath lodge in my throat, my stomach twist, my heart stop. This wasn't the name of some stranger. This wasn't the name of a secret lover. And it wasn't the name of anyone she had ever mentioned to me. But I knew it. I knew it in the way you recognize something from long ago, something you don't think about but never forget, a name tied to a memory you never expected to collide with your present life. I stepped forward, unable to stay hidden anymore. "Emily?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She gasped and turned, startled, eyes wide and red from crying. For a moment, she just stared at me, speechless, terrified, like I was the last person she expected to see. You followed me," she whispered. I nodded, though guilt tightened in my chest. "I had to. I didn't know what else to do. You've been hurting, and I couldn't ignore it anymore." Her eyes flickered with pain, then shame. She looked down at the grave quickly as if trying to shield it from me, like she wasn't ready for me to see what it meant. But I already had. "Em, who is this?" I asked quietly. The question broke something inside her. Her chin trembled. Her hands curled into fists against her knees. She sucked in a shaky breath that seemed to scrape against her throat. For a few seconds, she couldn't speak. She couldn't even look at me. Then, with the softest, most fragile voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, "I never told you about this part of my life." Her words were shaky, but they weren't evasive. They weren't defensive. They were tired, defeated, loaded with years of unspoken sorrow. I kneeled beside her slowly, giving her space but refusing to let her face this alone anymore. "I don't understand," I said honestly. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Why keep this from me for 8 years?" She closed her eyes like my questions were knives she expected. "I wanted to," she whispered. "Every year, every anniversary, every time I came here, I wanted to tell you." She swallowed hard. But I didn't know how. I looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't cheating. This wasn't betrayal. This was grief. Old, buried, suffocating grief. Something she had been carrying alone for far too long. I wanted to reach out and take her hand, but she pulled back slightly, holding herself together with both arms wrapped around her own ribs. "You're going to hate me," she whispered. My heart cracked at that. "Emily," I said softly, "there is nothing you could tell me that would make me hate you." But she shook her head violently, tears spilling again. "You don't understand," she cried. "This changes everything. Everything you think you know about me, about us, about my past. It changes all of it." Her words hung in the cold air between us, heavy and ominous. For the first time, I felt a truth settle in my bones. Whatever story lived behind this grave, whatever secret she had been protecting for 8 years, it wasn't small, it wasn't simple, it wasn't something easily explained. It was something that had shaped her, defined her, scarred her, something she had tried desperately to bury, but couldn't. I exhaled slowly, bracing myself. "Then tell me," I said. "Please, I want to understand. I want to know you. All of you." She lifted her gaze to mine, and in her eyes I saw it. The moment she decided she couldn't carry this alone anymore. That was when she spoke the words that shattered everything I thought I understood about my wife. But not yet the truth. Just the beginning of it. Emily didn't speak for a long time. She stayed kneeling in front of the grave, arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she were bracing against a storm only she could feel. Her breath came in short, uneven pulls. The winter air clouded around her face with every exhale, making her look fragile, like she might shatter if I touched her. Finally, she whispered, "I was 18 when I met him." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look at me. She looked at the grave. The name carved into the stone might as well have been carved into her ribs, buried deep in a part of her heart I never knew existed. "I didn't love him," she said carefully. "Not the way you probably think. He wasn't a boyfriend. He wasn't a fiancé. He wasn't anything like that." A part of me loosened, but only slightly. Because if he wasn't a lover, then who was he? Why did she carry his memory like it was a wound she never allowed to heal? Emily wiped her cheek with her sleeve and inhaled shakily. "I met him because of my sister." That stopped me cold. Her sister? She hardly ever talked about her family, just vague comments about a rough upbringing and some distance she liked to keep. I'd met her mother a few times. Quiet woman, anxious smile. Emily never mentioned siblings beyond a passing comment years ago. "We're not close." Now I realized she'd been avoiding that topic, for a reason. "My sister Megan," she said, confirming what I didn't want to assume. She was only 21 back then, and she wasn't doing well. Drugs, bad people, trouble she kept falling back into. Her voice faded for a moment. I could tell she was reliving it, piece by painful piece. "She had a baby," Emily whispered, "a little boy, and she couldn't take care of him, not even for the first week." My heart stilled. I knew then. The name on the grave. The dates. The ache in her chest. The pieces clicked, but I didn't speak, didn't interrupt, didn't rush her. She needed to say it. Megan disappeared 2 days after he was born, Emily continued. No note, no explanation. She just left. She'd always done that, run off when life got too hard. But this time, she left a baby behind. Her voice cracked at the word, baby. I felt my throat tighten. Emily's fingers brushed the top edge of the gravestone, slow and tender, like she was tracing the soft cheek of someone sleeping. They were going to put him into foster care, she said. I heard my mother on the phone, arguing with the social worker, telling them we didn't have the resources. She was right. We didn't. But I couldn't let them take him. Not when he had nobody. Her next breath trembled. So I volunteered. I told the hospital I would take care of him until Megan came back. I was just a kid myself. I didn't know what I was doing, but I meant it. She swallowed hard. And they let me. Silence swept through the cemetery like a cold wind. I felt something inside me shift, a new understanding, a profound sadness. You raised him, I whispered. Her eyes closed. For 1.5 years, she said, every day, every night, every bottle, every doctor appointment, every laugh, every fever. He was my whole world. I tried to imagine it. Emily, at 19, barely an adult, stepping into a role she wasn't prepared for. A baby boy relying on her for everything. Her mother working 2 jobs, stretched thin. Her sister missing, unreachable. No help, no roadmap, just survival. Her voice softened. His name was Jacob. My heart twisted when I heard it spoken aloud. Jacob, a name I'd never heard, a life I'd never known existed. Emily continued, tears slipping freely now. He was such a good baby, she said, almost smiling. Big brown eyes, always curious. He used to giggle when I sang to him. Terrible singing, too. He loved applesauce, hated naps, and refused to sleep unless I held him. She laughed quietly, a broken sound filled with longing. I used to carry him on my hip while I did homework. I'd sit him on the counter while I cooked. He'd fall asleep on my chest every night watching cartoons. I thought my sister would come back. Every day, I hoped. Every day, I checked my phone, checked social media, checked every place she used to go. Emily's shoulders stiffened, but she never came. I felt anger rise, not at Emily, but at the world she was born into, at a sister who abandoned her, at a system that allowed a 19-year-old to bear so much responsibility alone. What happened? I asked softly, though fear already coiled in my gut. The grave was answer enough, but I needed to hear it in her words. Emily's hands tightened in her lap. He got sick, she whispered. Just a cold at first. The doctor said it was nothing, just keep him hydrated. But it got worse so fast. Fever, coughing, trouble breathing. I took him to the ER and they admitted him. Her voice shook harder with each sentence. They said it was a viral infection that turned into pneumonia. His immune system was weak, and they told me I'd brought him in too late. Her face crumpled. I didn't know, she said, sobbing. I didn't know. I thought it was just a cold. I thought I was doing everything right. I was just a kid trying to take care of another kid. And he... Her words collapsed into a sob. I reached for her hand, gently, slowly. This time, she didn't pull away. She clung to me with both hands like she was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping her above water. He died that night, she whispered into her palms. In my arms, and I never forgave myself. I felt my own eyes burn. She wasn't hiding a betrayal. She wasn't hiding another life. She was hiding a wound so deep it had swallowed part of her soul. I'm so sorry, I whispered, voice thick. Emily kept going. My mother told me not to tell anyone. Not friends, not family, not future partners. She said people wouldn't understand. She said it would make me look irresponsible. She said it would ruin my life before it even started. Her lip trembled. And I believed her. The truth hit me like a punch. This wasn't just a secret. It was shame. It was grief. It was a buried trauma she had been forced to hide. And when I met you, she continued, turning toward me with swollen eyes, I wanted a fresh start. I didn't want you to see me as someone who failed a child. I didn't want you to pity me. I didn't want you to think I was broken. My heart broke at that. Emily, I said, you didn't fail him. But she shook her head so quickly it was like she couldn't risk the possibility of believing me. I come here every Sunday because I promised him I wouldn't forget him, she said, even if the world wanted me to, even if my family pretended he never existed. I couldn't do that to him. She touched the stone gently. I raised him. I loved him. And he died because I didn't know enough to save him. Stop, I said firmly, voice cracking. Stop. You were a child. You did everything you could. Everything. She didn't respond, but her grip on my hand tightened, as if my words were the only thread keeping her from unraveling completely. For a long moment, we just knelt there together in front of Jacob's grave, Emily finally unburdening 8 years of silence, and me finally seeing the hidden fractures inside the woman I loved. The truth didn't destroy our marriage. It explained it. Her distance, her tears, her Sunday rituals, her fear of being known completely. It all made sense now. What broke my heart wasn't the secret itself. It was knowing she had carried it alone. When her sobs finally calmed, she whispered, "Now, you know everything." I brushed her cheek gently. "No," I said. "Now I know you." But inside I felt something else too. Something heavy. Something uncertain. Could our marriage survive a secret this painful? Could our life move forward now that the past had finally surfaced? Could Emily heal after 8 years of silent suffering? I didn't know yet. All I knew was that this moment, kneeling beside her, feeling her heartbreak shake through her hand, was the closest we had been in months, and somehow the most fragile. The drive home from the cemetery was the quietest ride of my life. Emily sat curled against the passenger door, staring out at the passing fields, her hands folded tightly in her lap like she was afraid they'd betray her and start shaking again. I kept glancing over at her, wanting to say something, anything, to make the weight in the car lighter. But nothing felt right. She had just opened a wound she'd buried for 8 years. A wound she never meant for me to see. And now, here we were, driving home as if we'd just gone grocery shopping instead of standing over a grave that held a chapter of her life I never even knew existed. When we reached the house, she moved slowly, like each step took more energy than she had. Inside, she hung her coat with trembling fingers, then walked straight to the couch and sat down, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. For a long moment I stood by the doorway, unsure what to do next. Then she whispered, barely audible, "You should be angry." I walked over slowly and sat beside her, leaving just enough space to give her control over the moment. "I'm not angry," I said. "You should be," she insisted, voice cracking. "I lied to you. I hid something this big. I hid him." Her breathing hitched. "I hid who I was." "You didn't lie," I said gently. "You survived. And surviving doesn't look pretty. It doesn't sound neat. It doesn't come with perfect explanations. You were a child forced into a situation no one your age should ever have faced." She shook her head. "But I hid it from you. For years." "Yes," I said honestly. "And that hurt. But not because of the secret. Because you went through that alone." Her eyes filled again. "I didn't want you to think I was damaged." I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped all day. "Emily, we're all damaged. That's why we find each other. Because we need someone who won't run away when the cracks start showing." She lowered her gaze, absorbing my words carefully, like she didn't trust herself to believe them yet. "I didn't think I deserved a normal life," she whispered. Not after Jacob. I thought I'd fail at everything, that I didn't deserve to be loved again, so I buried that part of me, or tried to. I reached for her hand. You didn't fail him, I said firmly. Her lip quivered. But he died in my arms. And you were 19, I reminded her softly. A 19-year-old doing the job of an entire family. You didn't lose him because you didn't care. You lost him because sometimes life is cruel in ways no human can prevent. Her tears fell silently. She leaned into me then, slowly, like she was testing whether she still had the right, and when she settled against my shoulder, something inside me clicked into place. She wasn't broken. She wasn't flawed. She was human. And she was hurting. That night, we didn't talk much more. We just sat together, the house quiet around us, the weight of the truth resting between us like something we both finally had access to. It didn't feel like a wall anymore. It felt like a bridge. Fragile, yes, but real. She fell asleep on my chest eventually, tear-stained and exhausted, and I held her long after her breathing steadied. Because now that I knew what she'd been carrying, I wasn't going to let her carry it alone ever again. The next few days were careful ones. Emily moved slowly, like she was still adjusting to the idea that her past had finally been exposed to daylight. She apologized more times than I could count, over coffee, while folding laundry, even in the middle of brushing her teeth. I kept telling her she didn't have anything to be sorry for, but guilt was stitched so deeply into her that it would take more than reassurance to unravel it. As for me, I wasn't angry, but I was shaken. Not by who she had been, but by how much she had gone through without anyone to protect her. I kept replaying her story in my mind, the 19-year-old version of her, exhausted, terrified, holding a baby she loved more than anything, then losing him in the most traumatic way possible. It broke something in me to picture it. One evening, my older brother Mark called and asked how things were going. I wanted to tell him everything, but I didn't feel right sharing the details without Emily's permission. So I just said, "Emily's been struggling. I'm trying to help her through." Mark was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something unexpected. "Sometimes the secrets people keep aren't about dishonesty. They're about survival." That stuck with me. Because he was right. Her secret wasn't meant to deceive me. It was meant to protect her from a pain she wasn't ready to share. The next morning, I made a decision. While Emily slept, I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and drove back to Hillside Memorial Cemetery. I didn't tell her where I was going. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I knew she needed rest, not another emotional storm. The cemetery was quiet, the air still, winter sun casting long shadows over the headstones. I found Jacob's grave easily. The flowers Emily had laid were still fresh. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, breath clouding in front of me. "I don't know if this is weird," I murmured, "but I figured I should introduce myself." A soft breeze brushed past me. "I'm the man Emily married," I said quietly, "and I need you to know something. She loved you. She still does. I saw it today. She carries you everywhere she goes." My throat tightened. "And I'm going to take care of her. She'll never have to go through this alone again." For the first time since learning the truth, the weight in my chest lifted a little. When I came home, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table with swollen eyes and untouched tea. When she saw me, panic flashed across her face. "Where did you go?" she whispered. "I went to meet him," I said gently. Her breath caught. "Jacob?" I nodded. Her hands flew to her mouth and she started sobbing, not out of pain this time, but out of something like release. "You went, without being angry, without asking me to stop visiting? You went for him?" "For both of you," I said. She covered her face and cried, shoulders shaking, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as she needed. When she finally calmed, she looked at me with eyes that carried 8 years of fear and 8 seconds of hope. "Can we talk about him?" she whispered. "Anything," I said, "as much as you want." And for the first time in our entire marriage, she did. She told me about his laugh, his favorite toys, the way he used to kick his feet when he got excited, the little scar on his chin from bumping into the coffee table, the night he took his first steps, the day he said "Emmy" for the first time. Her voice broke often, but she kept going, and I listened to every word, because this was the part of her heart she had never allowed anyone to see, not even me. 1 month later, something changed. Sunday mornings no longer meant Emily slipping out quietly, shoulders heavy with guilt. Instead, we drove together, side by side, to Jacob's grave. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we sat in silence, sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled, but she was no longer alone, and neither was I. The secret that nearly broke our marriage ended up becoming the thing that rebuilt it, not because it was easy, but because it was honest. Because for the first time, we were finally living our life together, with nothing left buried. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts.